Happy Wednesday, everybody. It is Confessions of a Conveyancer. I'm only just here on time because my last client ran super duper late, so I'm sorry if the lighting isn't great or anything, but I just wanted to make sure that I got on time for you. So I am here. Now, all this heat has had me thinking about our topic for tonight. So if you're like me, with all this heat, I'm worried about our pets, and it made me think a little bit about pets when you're buying property and some of the traps that I sometimes see. Now, if you're like me and you can't do without your BFF, I could never live in a property if Gizmo couldn't be there with me. And one mistake I see a lot of is that when you're buying a strata property, people sometimes forget that just because you're going to be the owner of the strata property, that doesn't mean automatically that you're allowed to keep an animal there. So people know the rules about renting a property and whether you can have pets there, but they often forget the rules if you're going to buy a property. So just because you're going to be the owner of a strata property, that doesn't mean that you're automatically allowed to have pets. Now, if you're buying your own house, then absolutely that's no problem at all. But it's really where people get stuck is on strata properties. So just to recap, if you're buying a house, you don't need to have any approval, of course, to have pets. But if you're buying a strata property, just because you're owning it doesn't mean that you're necessarily allowed to have pets. Now, as I said, if you're like me, I can't live anywhere without my Gizmo. So if I was buying a strata property, the first thing you need to do is find out, are you allowed to have pets there? Now, don't just take anyone's word of mouth for it. Don't take face value of what the vendor says. What you need to do is get your conveyancer or solicitor to actually check the bylaws for the strata. And what they will say is, thanks, Sally, this doesn't apply to your Daisy, your big Daisy Duke dog, who's absolutely gorgeous. And so the strata bylaws will have one of three options. Okay, so you're buying a strata property, you've got a pet that you must have live with you, goldfish don't count. Any other pet, you've got to have approval. So there's three different options in the bylaws, and this is what you need to find out before you make an offer on the property. Because if you're like me, if I couldn't have Gizmo on a strata property, I wouldn't buy it. Most people I know are that attached to their pets and they feel the same way. And you just can't assume that because you're the owner, you can do what you like. So the three options are: one, they can be there providing that the body corporate, who is all the owners and the strata manager, agrees to it. Two, they will agree to it providing it's not unreasonable. So that's when you've got to have a small dog, or you've got to have the type of breed or cat, things like that. Or three, it's just out altogether and it's not allowed. So if you're looking at buying a strata property and you've got a pet that you just can't live without and you want to stay with you, you really need to make sure that you find out whether or not you can have that pet. As I said, a common misconception is that people think that just because they're going to own the strata property and not rent it, they're allowed to do whatever they want with pets, and unfortunately they can't. The last thing you want to do is move into the property, have your special BFF there living with you, then get a notice from the strata manager saying that, I'm sorry, that dog or cat's got to go, because that would be heartbreaking. So avoid all that stress. Find out from the start. It's actually really easy to find out from the start. And the thing is also, a lot of the times, if you have to get permission, you can usually go ahead and ask for that permission before you've actually agreed to purchase the property. So if it is one of the options where you can have a pet, but only if you have approval, go ahead and ask to have that approval up front. Any vendor would understand, I'm sure. And for you, it's just a no-brainer. Who would buy a property if you couldn't have your family there? And our pets are our family. Okay, so to just recap, don't buy a strata property if you have pets before you have found out if you can keep your pets there, or if you need approval to keep your pets there. And if you need approval, make sure you get that approval before you go ahead and buy, yeah? and a vendor is much more willing to help sign the forms off to get the approval if it means that they're going to get a sale. Gang, that's Wednesday. Look after your loved ones because it is very hot out there. I am just at the office. I'm going to pack up soon and go home and let my little gizmo in. I'm sure he'll be dying to get under the bed where it is nice and cool. I always finish off with a confession of a conveyancer, and today's confession is pretty simple. Like always, as soon as my last client leaves for the day, the shoes are kicked off, and I'm like a TV presenter. No shoes, but you can't tell. Anyway, thank you everybody for jumping on. I think you'll find this one a little bit interesting, so go back to replay. Look, share it out if there is anyone that you know is looking at strata properties and they have their loved dogs like myself. And what I'll do also, I've got a couple of handy little links with some really good information on this topic. I'll drop them in the comments below. It's got really simple information, how you go about getting that approval, what you need to do. But of course, at any time you can contact me and I'll help you out as well. Wednesday, please try and stay cool, everybody. Super dupers are allowed this time of year. They are negative calorie, I am 100% sure. Ben, Haley, Nor, thank you all for jumping on, and I will see you same place, same time next week.